Here, this is actually the first classroom I taught in when I was at NOVA, so this is like a nice full circle. I'm gonna sit, if that's okay. Okay. I want to start by saying, like, I can't do any of this without my support system. So I have my parents-in-law and also my mom that's sitting here because they're always supportive, which is fantastic, especially for somebody who's telling their people that they're going to become an artist. So especially as an immigrant parent too. So I'm appreciative of that. I'm also appreciative of my husband who's home with my 2 kids. So 4 and 6 years old. He's holding the household down so that it's nice and quiet in here and they're not running around with their cuteness. So usually, because this is like informal too, I talk a little bit about my background and where I grew up and how I grew up and how that has influenced my artwork. So this is just a picture of me in my home. I have a little studio space, which is the kitchen table at home, and also I have a studio space here at NOVA. So I was born in the 80s in New Jersey, in Bayonne, New Jersey, which is right next to Newark. It's also right next to Jersey City. It's a 2-mile radius city, predominantly white in the 80s. That's a picture of me and my brother. I have an older brother named Orlando. I like to bring up these pictures because they really influence what I'm currently creating, which wasn't intentional. It's just the intuition and the experiences that you go through like come out in the artwork, at least for me. This is also an image of some of my cousins. So my parents are from Dominican Republic. My mom is one of 6 and my dad is one of 14. And they all have kids. And that's us. And now we also have kids. So it just keeps growing and growing. So there's a lot of us that like grew up in the same year. So I'm 1 out of 6 of 1987. I'm right here in the back. This is my cousin who's 3 days younger than I am. And then this is my brother who's over here, who's in that same picture wearing the same, I guess, outfit. One of the things that I really appreciate is photography. So my dad took a lot of pictures of us when we were small. Like those pictures where the mirror's in the background and you're like looking at the mirror that's also looking at the camera. I have a lot of those. And like all the cousins have pictures like that. So I really appreciate him documenting things that I guess I wouldn't think would have been important, like one of the pieces that I made as a kid. I like to show this piece too because it still talks about exactly what it is that I'm speaking of in my work currently, which is a little crazy. So the bottom is my drawing. So that's, you know, with the many fingers and the sun with the glasses because it has to be a cool sun and the cotton ball, you know, clouds. But the thing that's really important here is that there's a figure and that there's a space, as in an environment, which is something that I still do. And then the image at the top is, you know, my dad also likes to compete. So he's like also drawing at the same time as I'm drawing. So that's an image of me, his version of it. And also he's obsessed with sports. So that's like a volleyball, I'm assuming, drawing. So my parents ended up divorcing and we moved down to Hialeah, Florida when I was 8 or 9. I went to a school where I met my best friend at the time, who's also Dominican and Puerto Rican. So we like clicked in culture. She loved to dance, and part of our culture is a lot of music and a lot of dancing. And she wanted to go to a magnet school. So, or I should say a magnet program where there was dance. So we ended up applying. Our teachers told us to apply to Rainbow Park Elementary, which is in Opelika, which is predominantly underserved African American community. So there was a nice culture shift for me coming from Jersey and then landing in Hialeah and then going to Opelika was something that I feel now as an adult like really shifted the way that I see things. So I love dance. Like I appreciate dance. I go to the dance shows, like especially ballet, because By the time they introduced ballet to us, I was like, I cannot do this. Like, I cannot stretch. Like, I don't want to be on my, messing on my toes. I like my feet. Like, so she wanted to continue doing dance, but I was not interested in that. So I had to pick another art form to be able to continue in this magnet process for middle school. So dance wasn't it, and theater, you can literally read my face, like how I'm feeling, so that wasn't gonna work. I love music, but I don't want to play instruments. I was already in chorus with the recorder playing Titanic, no. So the only thing that was left was art, and just because. So they gave us a sheet that said, you need to do still lives, you need to have this amount of still lives. I'm like, what is a still life? So trying to get information on that. And then doing the audition. So somehow I got in, and I was really terrible. And our teachers were very strict on, this is art and we're going to develop you as an artist. So, you're 12 years old, you're in a classroom with other kids that don't know if they want to do this or not, but they're in the space, and you have to make art for 2 hours every day. And then you got to go home and do your regular, STEM, and then on top of that, do your homework for art. So it was a lot of like technical development that happened during middle school. And it was also in Opelika, again, underserved, underfunded. So we didn't have supplies for every student. It was like everybody had to share, watercolor sets or oil pastel sets. The cameras, when we used to take pictures with the Nikon in the dark room, like we had to share a lot. But I think that not having really made us creative, because we had to figure out how to do things with, the smallest amount of blue, right, that you can do. So these are some examples of the works that I made during middle school. So that one being in 6th grade, that's a print of my aunt when she was 15. So she had her quinceañera, and I love that picture. And that's my first like lino cut print. And then the middle one is like at the end of 7th grade. So I wanted to show these so that you guys can see the development of it. I wasn't born with the skill of creating. It was like taught to me. Like there are steps, just like practice. So the middle one is a still life of a skeleton that we had in the classroom. And then the last one is a painting that I did on my own. It's the first time that I painted a nude person, and it's acrylic on cardboard. Like I said, middle school prepared us to, become artists. So they wanted us to go to the best high schools, to be able to go to the best colleges for the arts. So they had us apply to 4 schools: Northwestern, Michael Kropp, which was new at the time in Miami, Dash, which is just strictly art school, and New World. And New World was the top at the time. I don't know about now if there's any Dash people in here. I'm a New Worlder. So there's competition there, but these are some examples of some of the works that I did there. So again, we were honing our skills. We were like really looking at difficult still lives. We were painting outside. So this is still in the neighborhood where my mom lives in Miami Gardens. We did a lot of darkroom photography. I love photography. And then some 3D stuff, which I'm really bad at. But I wanted to share some of those things. I learned the differences in resources. So coming from middle school to high school, which was super funded, New World gave us everything. Like we were doing 3D modeling by the time we were in 2001. We were taking pictures, learning how to do slides. We had a real serious photo dark room. We had the best paints. There's just closets. Like you could just open a closet and get your golden, acrylic titanium paint that were huge tubes and go and, paint. So seeing the disparity between what kids could have versus what kids have really impacted the way that I do work. And it shows off in my work too. This is a piece that I feel was really significant for me in high school. So this is charcoal and Conti on cardboard. I'm still like attached to these objects because it's easily accessible and it's cheap. And this is just showing the transition between home, school, and back home. So to be able to go to New World, you had to wake up at 5, get on the bus by 5:30, get on the train, so taking the tri-rail at 6:20ish, getting to the government center, and this is like all of us, so we're like in a bus from the inner cities going to the tri-rail, getting off in government center. Government center wasn't what government center is now, which I went down there and I couldn't even recognize where I was. And then walking to New World, so it was like 2.5 blocks to get to class by 7:25, staying till 3:45, repeating the process again. So you get home by 5:30. So 12 hours basically, like out of the house. And then going home and, you know, eating and fighting with your mom and doing your homework. So this is like the journey of that. This was it still is my best friend, Janae, and she just has her Sony headphones on as we're like riding the train. So again, your high school professors like push us to get to the best art school. So I went to MICA, which is Maryland Institute College of Art. I was there for a year, and then the market crashed. My mom lost her job. And then I went through that young phase, which is like, what am I doing? Why am I choosing art? Like, you hear people constantly saying, how are you going to be successful as an artist? Are you going to be in New York? Like, sleeping on the, you know, all this stuff that people say. So I was like, okay, how am I going to help my family? So I'm just going to do business because it's a safer route. I know I can get a job with a business degree. I wasn't so sure within the arts. Like, I knew I was talented, but you still have like those insecurities as an artist. So I came back and I went to the University of South Florida, and I was studying business for a year. And I was really depressed. I just wanted to create. So I would like leave where I stayed, the dorms, and would paint outside, and somebody came by and it's like, oh, are you part of the art program? Which I didn't even know there was an art program. And I say this speech all the time. And so I applied to the art program at USF and I got in. So I double majored because I wasn't going to waste my money in the business classes. So I got my BS in marketing and management as a backup because I knew I wanted to be in the arts somehow, opening a gallery or doing something, and also painting because I just loved it so much. So this is examples of some of the paintings that I did in my undergrad. I'm not realizing that there's a connection of what it is that I'm creating and who it is that I'm depicting. I just know that I'm like attracted to people that have this essence, this presence of confidence. They like walk in the room and you're like, who is that person? And me like trying to get to know that person, which I termed as swagger. So they have like this swag about them. But I didn't know any of that at that time. And these are large paintings. They're 3 by 4 feet. Some are 4 by 5. In undergrad, I knew that I wanted to teach because I saw that my teachers had summers off. And they also had like a studio space. So I was like, oh, they get to teach, which I like being in the classroom. I like being with my friends and talking about the work and critiquing. Like, I love that. But I also enjoyed that they had a life out of teaching. So it gave them time to like make. So I was like, I'm going to become a professor. I don't want to do K through 12. I don't have the patience for little kids, like, or their parents. I want to be at a university setting, not knowing that it was so difficult, right, to be able to go into that realm and compete with everybody else. So this is, to be able to do that, you need to get a master's. So I went to FAU in Boca, and I was challenged a lot about this idea of swagger and what it meant. And there was a lot of reading about race theory. There was a lot of reading about Afro-Caribbeanness, a lot of readings about identity just because I was other than. And I questioned a lot my teachers because I was like, do you guys ask this of your white students? Like, are they learning about whiteness? Are they like looking into who they are for their work? So there was a lot of that, which is, you know, my boss said that I'm always, you know, fighting a little bit, but it's part of my nature. So while I was in grad school, I got questioned about why I was depicting, who I was depicting, and if the environments were important because some of my paintings didn't have environments. So I started like really developing what the cityscapes look like, how they make us who we are, but also sometimes you feel trapped in them. Like you try to get out, but there's blockages and systems that are set up to keep you in that space. So these are some composites of what Opalaka looks like, and different spaces in Opalaka. And that's me in grad school painting. I have the Napoleon complex, so things need to be bigger than what they are. And this is on mirrored film. So you could walk up and you kind of see yourself in the space. And it's also transparent. So you could walk behind it and see the person behind it. So literally there's people in the space, if that makes sense. I also did drawings at the time. These are 12 by 6 feet drawings. No, that's a lie. They're 10 by 5 foot drawings. Again, composites of Opalaka. And also, I think I have, what's it called? Havana in there too. While I was in grad school, I was also printmaking. So one of the things that I like to talk about with middle school is not having means that you have to be creative on developing what you need to develop with different materials. So I love playing in the studio, and I love when things like talk to each other. So monotype printmaking is when you paint on a plexiglass, or you draw on a plexiglass with paint, and then you put it through a machine that has paper, and then you get a print, and it's one print. So it's kind of like painting, because I can paint on the glass, which I was doing, but I get one print. If you pass the paper again through the machine, you get a ghost of that print. So you get the remaining ink, which I like transparencies. So you can tell that there's like ghost prints in the background, and then this is the original one print on the top. So I was really playing a lot with my collaging in 2014. This is the same person. I found them on Instagram. They were friends of friends. I tagged them. I did the whole thing that you're supposed to do to get the rights, so I don't get in trouble. I learned a lot in business classes. And then I get bored really quickly once I know how to do a medium. So I try different things. So these are some collages that I was doing. Once I graduated from FAU, I applied to 130 something jobs because I was like, I am getting a job in the arts. And I was blessed enough to get a full-time position at Daytona State, where I was for 2 years as a professor there. And I created these there. So I had my studio space, I had the shop, the students were fantastic. And I started cutting out images and trying to build my own city. And then one day, a piece of string fell on one of my collages in the studio. And I was like, oh, I don't have to draw the power lines anymore. Like literally the thread is creating the connectors for the pieces that I'm making. And I'm also thinking about the thread having a history. I'm also thinking about my grandma who used to show me how to crochet and the connectedness of that. And also like the power in the thread instead of me like physically drawing it with a pencil. And it becoming three-dimensional was something that I really enjoyed. These are just some more examples of what those look like. These are shadow boxes. They're like this small. I was just playing a lot in my studio and trying to figure out how to make space. And then one day I went to Michael's and there was a sale next to the thread that I needed. And it had a little canvas, which I'm used to because I'm a painter. And then it just clicked like, can I make a little person out of thread? And what would that look like? And then I'm thinking about like fashion and the power of the labor of creating these people who literally is the same thing that I'm talking about. So I made a little one and I was like, this is kind of cool, but I mean, I could just paint that. And I'm like, well, maybe if I make it a little bit bigger. So this is 18 by 15 inches. That one's 6 by 6 inches. So it's pretty small. And you can see that I'm trying to figure out how to do the stuff. Like I'm pulling too hard. So the backing is like curving onto itself. You can see it here too. And I'm like, this is not working. So I left it alone. And then Trayvon Martin happened. And then I was in a relationship with my husband. Currently my husband was my boyfriend at the time. And he's also Afro-Caribbean. He's also big if you see him. He looks like a football player and he can look intimidating. So I was thinking about all those issues while I was making these collages, and I was like, I want to make a political and social statement with the image of an African American male. And I want it to be big, and I want it to be on the floor where people literally step on the person that I'm creating. And since I was doing a lot of monochromatic work, I was like, okay, I can make it out of black and white and gray yarn. So I had to do a lot of research on what kind of backing I can use. So there's this thing called hook rug mesh, which is for hook rugging. I don't know how to hook rug. I learned how to crochet. I forgot how to crochet. So this was like something that I was like, I think I can do this, but I don't know how to make an eyeball out of yarn. So I was on the floor trying to figure it out. I'm like, I think it kind of looks like a face. Okay, let's keep going. And then rolling it up and figuring it out. So this is one of the first pieces that I made in 2016 while I was teaching at Daytona State in the studio space. I also was thinking about transparency. So what do I do with the background of this piece? Because it has like a grid system, and I'm not gridding anything. I'm not projecting. I'm literally like freehanding it. So you can still see like the lines in the background. And again, I was thinking about cityscapes. So I decided to paint in the background. And I can't paint on the wall in my studio. So I needed to put a sheet of paper behind it and then paint it. So when I did that and I removed it, I was like, oh snap, I have a second piece, which is on the paper, which you'll see. So this is just an example of that first piece, a screenshot, how big it is. One of the things I like about these, especially with the backing, is that the backgrounds change the way that the pieces look. If it's in front of a window, if it's on a colored wall, if it's on a door frame. And then I left that alone because I felt like it was all right. And I was more comfortable painting. So I went back to painting. I went back to collaging and printmaking. I bought a house. I got married. I got pregnant. I couldn't paint anymore because I got pregnant. And I couldn't print make anymore because I was pregnant. So I was like, what can I make that's safe for my baby? So I went back to creating the smaller little yarn works, which is what Jim had. That was one of those pieces. So I've been applying to residencies for a long time after grad school, and I can never get it. Guess when I got it?
When you were pregnant.
Correct! So I couldn't go. And I was like, dang it. I'm going to reapply after my daughter's one, because the guilt of being a mom and an artist and a wife and having traditional grandparents also affects the way that you decide to do things. So I applied in 2020. My daughter was almost 2 years old. I just had my son in 2020, COVID baby. They're crazy. And I got a residency in 2021 at Hambridge in Georgia, which was my first residency. They don't have internet where you stay. You have to like go down the mountain and then go to the main office and then have internet. So I was like trying to process that as a new mom of 2 kids, trying to do this thing and thinking, is this worth it to like leave your children and your family to do art? But I went. Thankfully I went. And my support system is amazing because they step in when I need them to. So I went and I created the pieces in color this time. So grad school and thinking about color really impacted the way that I was doing work. But I'm from Miami. Like, it's so colorful down here. And I'm like, my work is about people, and people have color and they wear color, and it's about pattern. So I started incorporating color within the work. I started applying to other residencies and other shows with the work that I created during the residencies. And this is one of the first, I think, most important installations that I had. That was a solo show in Texas. And it was part of Project Row Houses, which you have to like apply. And a major curator comes and they pick who is going to be part of this space. And I knew about this because a person in a residency reached out to me and said, hey, Kandy, you should apply to this. It's in my hometown. Just letting you know, it's due tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So I applied and I got in. Like, I knew about it, that I got in a week later. And I was like, this is crazy. And they fly you out and they pay for the stuff. And it was awesome. I brought my family so they could see what it looks like in the space. And I did workshops, which I love teaching. It's just something that's just born in me. But this is an example of like some of those installations. I started playing a lot with repurposed materials too. So going to the thrift stores and the Salvation Army and cutting up people's clothing and thinking about the past within the present work that I'm making. And it's about the connection of people. So it just made sense in my head. More installation shots of it. This is the paper that I'm talking about. So I have to put a paper in the back and then spray paint it or paint it. And once I remove this part, this is the remnants of that. So this is saying all the political and social issues that I want to say within the work. And also looking at a powerful figure like that's confronting you in a space. So these are little dots that are squares. So it looks like pointillism when you look at it. So I'm thinking about our history. And it's also like a gridding system. So I'm thinking about the way cities are gridded for certain people. So there's a silhouette. So you think about like when people pass, you get the silhouette in the streets. Growing up in Jersey, I saw a lot of those silhouettes. So there's like these connections that happen within the paper. This is an example of how the back changes things. So this is an installation that was in Missouri. I think it came down in January. But I like the way that they played the background with the piece and also the silhouette coming through that was gold. So it's a nice connection of like these two things. This is Brooklyn Betty, also somebody that I met on Instagram. Instagram's crazy. In 2023, I had an incredible experience happen where an art agent met up with someone that I worked with for an art event and told the art agent about my work. She reached out to a gallery in New York called ACA Galleries. They represented Faith Ringgold, so they have her estate now. They've shown Picasso, they had him Romare Bearden. It's just like, it was crazy. So they reached out to me the minute that they saw my work and they're like, we're coming down. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of teaching. Like, I'm not even thinking about representation or any of that. I'm just like in my studio, I go and teach, I be a mom, and then, you know, I make work. That's like the thing. So they ended up coming down and they fell in love with the work. I had exhibitions up during Art Basel in 2022. And I signed with them 6 months later because, of course, I have to read the contract and get the lawyer and going back and forth and do the whole thing and talk to people about it. And this is one of the exhibitions that's in their space. So this was my first solo show in New York. Not last year anymore, in 2023. And these are some of the pieces that I made for that. I'm still thinking about like painting and drips and the erasure of people and the building up of people within the work. This is some more installation shots. They're on 10th and 20th, so it's a nice corner gallery. You can see the work from outside. I was just like, what is happening? And it was really exciting because there was a lot of different people coming into the gallery, which was nice to see, especially during an opening. Some more images of what that looks like. I also do the little small ones still because I get bored of the big ones. So when I get bored of the big ones, I move to the small ones. These are some examples of those. These are 10 inches by 11 by 14. I love the backs, so I take pictures of the backs too. They're all hand knotted. I like to say people think I'm tufting, I'm not. This is Babushka Sheldon. He's actually gonna be in a show in London, so I'm super excited. That opens next week. I just found out yesterday, which is fantastic. Again, the backing also says everything that I want to say politically and socially. You can like see the violence of the threading and the knotting in the back, and also the beauty in the front, which is really nice. This is how big they are. I have a problem. These are images of the people in front of their work, which is always nice to see. They actually become like celebrities. So like they come into the space and then people are like, are you that blah, blah, blah? And they're like, yeah, let me take a picture of you. So they're constantly like, you know, I love that that I can see them inside of that space, inside of that happiness. And then they bring their friends, and then their friends are like part of the picture. It's great. So this is Miyaku. I met her at the Armory in 2023. She was walking around, and I saw her. I'm like constantly sitting and looking at people. And she walked around, and I was like, dang, I got to stop her. But like, how am I going to get the courage to stop her? And I was like, if she comes around, that's a sign from God. And then I'll get up and I'll stop. So whatever, I'm in the Armory, my first time, and I'm like, this is insane. And she walks by again, and I'm like, shit, now I got to go talk to her. So I got up, I approached her, and she's like, this is so crazy because I asked God to send me a sign to like get out of the job that I'm in to move into fashion. And I was like, this is crazy because you have so much swag. Like, what's going on? So she's crying, and I'm like, you're amazing. So I ended up taking a picture of her, and then she came the next year to the Armory to see her piece. And Henri is another one like that too, where I met him at the Armory. He was walking around. He works in management, and he had on like this fire outfit, which is this one in the back. And I stopped him after I stopped Miyaku, because by that point I had some kind of like courage to stop people. So I was excited to do that, and he also came. And then this is Lorianne. Lorianne has been the most complicated piece I've ever done in my life. It's still the most complicated. She came to a show in 2022 before I met the gallery. And she had on this outfit because she went to an art exhibition for her friend, which I was also in the art exhibition as an artist. And I saw her, and she had this, just like that, this huge big fro with the glasses. And I'm like, who is that? And I look at my husband, and my husband looks at me, and he's like, you need to go. I'm like, damn it. So I went up to her, and she was so nice. I took a picture, and she shows up to the exhibitions as well. So when I'm bored of fiber, I try other things because I'm a crazy person. And I was really interested in glass, again, transparencies, light, so light coming through the space. I think about our history and images where we are not part of, especially when it comes to Christian churching. And I think about those things as I'm creating the work. So this is Rico, my first stained glass piece. I took a class with a woman in Fort Lauderdale. That piece helped me get the Broward County Cultural Division Innovation Award, which is $10,000 for you to use how you need to use it, which was great. So I proposed creating stained glass pieces of people from the Dominican Republic. I'm starting to read a lot about my island and my heritage and how that affects me and everyone else in my family. And those kinds of really difficult conversations that we have on the island when it's Haiti and also Dominican Republic. So I wanted to go back to the roots. And I proposed a piece where I'm creating still lifes on the island. So I'm using the materials that's there. I'm taking pictures of people from there that work in the touristic environments, which usually live in the poorest conditions on the same space, and then giving them the image of themselves, which they can't afford to like have that. So this is one of those pieces. This is Katy. Super cool. I saw her in the street. I'm like, who's that again? And then building up that courage, because my thing is Spanglish. It's not like the best Spanish. Dominicans already have like this broken Spanish. So it's like on top of that, it's like my accent. And I'm just like, Dad, I need some help. Can you ask her and tell her? I'm like, so there's that. This is Pedro Miguel, who was he worked in El Campo too, in Samaná in Dominican Republic. So in the fields, in the farm, took a picture of him. Eventually, this became an installation at Baca, so the Bailey Contemporary Art Space in Pompano Beach. And I wanted it to be super dark so that it reads like church when you go in. And then send it to New York, and they did that installation there as well. And one of the things I really enjoy about showing in these spaces is the community and people getting together and seeing themselves in spaces where they normally don't see themselves. And creating bigger pieces. This is so like wrinkly. I need a better picture. This has been ironed, so it's nice and soft. But this is an image of that. I actually did that here on campus. These are my Española series, which is new that I'm doing. So thinking about my roots, this is my cousin Yuritsa and her best friend Cassandra. Cassandra's Haitian, my cousin's Dominican. So I'm talking about colorism and racism and like also coming together as a unit. They're wearing the same thing. Eventually she'll be seated. The Haitian will be seated and the Dominican will be standing. So I'm thinking about what that means in terms of image. I'm also thinking about myself while I'm doing this, and that's Julie back there. So the biology professor here at NOVA, she went to go see my work in New York. This one's called La Dos Candies, which is in reference to Frida Kahlo's Las Dos Fridas, where she talks about her European ancestry and her Mexican culture doing the same thing. So I'm thinking about I was born in America, but I also have my Dominicanness. That's part of it, and that's still developing, which is why she's not complete. And I think this is my last slide of me. That's it. Woo! Any questions? Yes.
How long does it take you to complete a piece like this?
I'm very impatient, which is probably why I do a lot of different mediums, but a week or two. If it's 2 weeks and I'm still working on that piece, I'm really angry. I'm like really frustrated because I'm already like 10 people in my head. Like I already have who's next, what's next, what can I play with next.
Even the stained glass?
Stained glass takes a longer time, but I try to get, like when I was in DR, I did, I think 1 every 3 days. So I'm like working, but your fingers need a break because you're grinding. So I didn't have fingerprints.
Do you usually like paint it out or draw it before you?
Yeah, I usually gesture it. And the gesture is always wrong. So I gesture and I measure it to make sure that they fit. And I make them small on purpose because they always end up bigger. So they're like this small in the space and then they end up being the right size. Sometimes they end up being the right size.
With the 3 images you have there, that when you just were asked about the images, is that how you started and then it developed? I was wondering the progression of those 3 images.
Yeah, so sometimes I do like the little ones just to figure out how am I gonna do this lace with the big one, or like what should come first, especially when it's like a complicated pattern. The little ones are like my sketches before I get to the big one. So these 2 are the same image. It's just like I want you to see how big it is in comparison to like the middle phase.
I'm just curious, when those big stitches, how do you have the canvas hanging from the, are you going back to the back and pulling the needle through, or?
So I roll it up. So it's on the wall.
Right.
I draw it, then I roll it up so it's just the face because I always start with the face. And I pin it, and then, I'm holding it like it's my baby,
Right.
and I'm like, and then tying it. So I already know how to tie without looking at the back. So I'm like, and I usually have like 10 other needles already ready.
Oh.
So once I'm done with the needle, I have like my little thing, and then I get the other needle and I start again.
I would love to see a video of you creating like that.
So I'm at the Broward main library on the 1st floor. That's my studio space right now.
Okay.
I'll be there for 2 months, and I try to be there every day. So except weekends because it's family time. So I'm working. So if you want to see me working, just come.
And time-lapse videos on your YouTube.
Yes, and I have a YouTube page with time-lapse video that my husband edits. So it's a partnership, man. Yes.
How has your art influenced your students? That they want to kind of follow your footsteps and create similar art?
That's a great question. I feel like they're inspired by what I do. But I think they were inspired by what I do even before the signing. I try not to push portraiture onto them. If they're interested in portraiture, I feel like I'm the perfect person to help as like a professor, to do portraiture, but a lot of them like love abstract or they love environment paintings. But my job is to help them figure out what it is that they want to do and how technically they can do that. So by the time they get to senior year, the technique is there, just like I was taught. And now you can think about conceptually what it is that you want to say and how you're going to say that. Yes.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Speaking as a person of Haitian descent whose name is Cassandra.
Hey!
How much has the world of art changed since Trayvon Martin, since George Floyd, in depicting Afro-Caribbean, African American people? As a person, of course, as I said, of this descent, I am always looking. The reason I know who you are is because you had a display at the Miramar Cultural Arts Center.
That's right.
Which is a very, Caribbean-focused place. That's home. I'm comfortable. That's where I'm at. But I travel to many other cities, specifically the Northeast, and I don't see us.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly ever. I'm always trying to look to find where we are. So do you think there has been a shift? And if there has, is that shift still going on, or has it died away because those things aren't like on the news and prevalent as much as they were back then?
I think that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, so that we can find each other. And also the work talks about like the fading away of us. So that's why there's a lot of like transparency and light and silhouettes. I do think that we were hot for a minute. I think that, I don't want to say we're not as hot anymore. I do think that there's trends. And right now it's fiber. Thank God I was making it before it became what it is now, because it becomes popular. But I often think about, well, when fiber dies, then what? But yes, it's hard to find us still. If that.
Any last questions?
Yes.
I'm curious, what kind of person or business buys your art, and what do they do with it after they acquire it? And
Where's Jim?
I'm also curious who your favorite artists are.
I love Barkley Hendricks. If you don't know Barkley Hendricks, look him up. He passed away, but his paintings are exactly what I want to say. But he says it with paint. And they're large or beautiful. I also like Micheline Thomas. She's amazing. Yes. And she's also a portrait artist. I like Carrie James Marshall. It's another person that I look up to. There's also Wengichi Mutu. I think that's how you say her name. I love the explosions within her work and the collaging mixed with painting and glitter. Like, what was the other question?
The other question was, what kind of person or business acquires your work, and what do they do with it once they acquire it?
So one of the things when I signed the gallery, I was like, I don't want just like rich white people to own my stuff, because then I'm a collection. This piece, you're buying a minority and you're putting it inside a box for other people that are like you to see. So my thing is like, I want to know who's buying my stuff, and I want to approve or not approve. And I want there to be a price range where it's like, I can buy it. My mom can buy it. And then Frou-Frou over here can also buy it if that's what they want. I'm really interested in being in museums, like being acquired in museum spaces, so that my daughter can one day go and be like, that's me. Mommy made that for me, and bring her people or whoever, So there's price ranges where it's like $250 all the way to $100 for now. So I try.
And yesterday's prices won't be there tomorrow. So buy them today while you can. I want to give Kandy a big thank you.
Thank you.